Yep, yep. One, two, three. Does that sound all right? Well, I'm a little bit worried about how it looks on me. Okay, let's do it.
Hola, hola, aquí estamos. Ole, ole.
Bé, bona tarda a tothom, benvinguts, buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll do this session, this dialogue in English. So, if you have any problem with following the English speaking, you can have the translation device just outside the hall. To start, I just want to introduce our three guests here in this dialogue. We'll try to do it attractive and try to share the most ideas we can. On my left side, we have Dr. Barney Dalgarno from Charles Sturt University. He's associate professor in ICT and education and associate dean in learning and teaching within the Faculty of Education at Charles Sturt University. Barney is responsible for strategic leadership and policy development in learning and teaching within the faculty, as well as having a significant role in learning and teaching praxis across the university. He has led faculty and university-wide initiatives in assessment, transition, and retention, and online learning, all of which have been strongly underpinned by research informed applications of technology learning. In the middle, we have Ismael Peña from Universitat Oberta de Catalunya, Open University of Catalonia, Doctor of Information Society and Knowledge, Technical Knowledge Management, Diploma of Advanced Studies in Political Science and Public Administration, Professor in Public Policy Development, Faculty of Law and Political Science at the Open University of Catalonia. And just on my left, Víctor Puntes, from l'Institut Català de Nanociència i Nanotecnologia, holds a PhD in physics from the University of Barcelona for his work on giant magnetoresistance in granular alloys. You have to explain us a little bit what's this real impacting name, magnetoresistance in granular alloys. Completed his undergraduate studies in chemical engineering and material science at the Université Louis Pasteur from Strasbourg, France, and at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, Autonomous University of Barcelona in Catalonia. He's a researcher at the Catalan Institution for Research and Advanced Studies, ICREA. With all three, we have to open this dialogue with the question we were using as a title. Hi ha nous escenaris per a la construcció del coneixement. Hay nuevos escenarios para la construcción del conocimiento. Are there new models of knowledge construction? What I will ask first to our three opponents here is to explain a little bit their vision, to share with us their vision, and after that we will start the dialogue first with them, all them three here on the table, and after that we will open the dialogue with all of you who want to share. If you want to share your questions or your thoughts, you can use the hashtag of this forum. You can find it, I think, up there. It's FIET 2014. You can use this hashtag and you will appear in these screens here. As I'm appearing, you can find also the names of all three. Victor is NanoWiki, Ismael is ICT Logist, and of course Barney is the last one. So you can find their names, you can use the hashtag, you can share with you your thoughts, your questions, and also you can share at the end of the dialogue. You can share the mic, we can share it with you, and you can speak here in any language you want. We have translation, so you can speak in any language you want. So we start with Dr. Puntes, with the main vision of this very open question. Are there new models of knowledge construction? And after that, we will follow with Ismael and Barney.
Thank you, Jordi. To go straight to the subject, yes, there is a new environment for innovation, for sure, and developing knowledge. There is two things. One is that crisis. I mean, the crisis has been breaking plenty of things, and now there is plenty of pieces out there, so you can build new things. There is plenty of expertise. There is plenty of experts that doesn't have a job. There is machines which have been stopped. There has been I'm working also in production of biogas. There is plants which are stopped because of the crisis, but they are there. You can go and do things. So the crisis is so you break the things and give you pieces so you can build new things. And this is thank you for the crisis, and maybe we need even stronger crisis to be even have more pieces to create new things. That's the first thing that is genuinely new now, and it's gonna grow in the future because we still have financial crisis that is going to rebound. We have the environmental crisis and the energy crisis all together. This is going to make is going to break all structures. And as you know, they take stones from the Colosseum to make the churches, as they took also stones from the amphitheater to build new things. So having to break things, give you pieces to build things, and this is a reality now. The other thing also I want to say, an example that yes, you can do things. This is what you have on the screen is a nanosatellite. I work with nanoparticles. Nanosatellites is slightly bigger, but it's 10 centimeters. This is something like that that you can put on space. There is about already hundreds of them launched by private companies. They are very small. It's very simple to throw them to the stationary orbit, which is very low because they are very small. And in addition, you can power them with a cell phone. And as far as the cell phone has got a battery, don't use the screen of the cell phone, can be taking pictures or can be sending things. And then you can do swarm of nano satellites and do things on space. And it's something that you can build at home. You can build your own satellite at home, and with very little amount of money, you can put it on space and start and they just got the GPS and all you need to communicate with your satellite. Other thing also is is this the garage? This is that was not the garage. That was in front of the garage. That was in my house, in the porch of my house. That was synthesizing iron oxide nanoparticles. This is the material that you need to do hyperthermia to photoablation of tumors in the brain, for example, and also for biotechnology to feed anaerobic bacteria to increase the production of biogas. You can do it. All the things that we got there, we bought it in drugstores and in a hardware store. So you can do your highly performing nanoparticles for medicine, oncology, energies, green energy solution. You can do them at home in your kitchen with the standard products that you find. It's not very difficult to find. So you can do it now. So you don't. So this is outside of the university, outside of the corporation. Before it was more control. So there is that is important, and this is a good example. The other thing also is like we have been seeing this, we have one here, here's the printer, a printer that can print objects. You can have one at home. It's about 800 euros. You can get the RepRap that reproduces itself at the 80-90%. You need a few pieces of metal to complement it. Now, for example, I work with people in Lausanne that before the surgeon in the oncology department, before in the intervention, he looked at the picture of the tumor. And then even afterwards, he had even a 3D reconstruction in the computer to see the tumor he has to operate. But now they print the tumor, and he get the tumor in his hands, made of polyethylene, before opening the guy and looking where it's going to cut, where is the vessels, blood vessel entering and getting out of the tumor. So this is also a revolution of fabrication that you can do also at home. You cannot get the tomography of the image of your tumor at home soon, but you can get the tumor printed at home, and then you can study before intervention. And my last slides, and also it's what we are going to be doing tomorrow. So there is we have been, I don't know why we have been discussing about late capitalism and Marxism during this Congress, but you know, the problem was the control of the means of production. Now the means of production are almost public, and I'm very easy to access. In fact, this is some of the experiments that we propose to make tomorrow. There are experiments that in principle 90% you can make it from things that you find at home. And in addition, the idea of the experiment is to survive in the world after collapse in Mad Max. So is to detoxify water, to disinfect water, to make nanoparticles for diagnosis, to make a solar cell with a raspberry jam and titanium dioxide nanoparticles, which are in the powdered glass sugar, which are in the cakes. So these things you can get them at you can get it in the bakery, and you can make nanoparticles. They make solar cells. They are not very powerful, but you can make them. You can make it at home. And I think developing all this, the freedom to be able to do things, not depending in an infrastructure where you say you want to do that, you have to come here, and I have the big machine, I have the printer, so you cannot print your book unless that I like your book. The freedom, even I love academia, I work in academia, I'm very much for academia, but even being away from academia is even more freedom, it's even nicer. And now you have the means, you have the infrastructure and the tools to innovate at home very cheap. You just need knowledge. Again, I think if you are smart, you can go very far. If you are not that smart, then you have to spend a lot of money and you need a lot of resources and you need to develop big infrastructures. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, very much. It seems like Victor is doing some kind of magic. Tomorrow morning you can see more magic in the hands of Victor and all his knowledge. Ismael Peña.
Okay, I think my speech is a little bit away from these Breaking Bad slides. But actually, the idea is it's more or less exactly the same. It's not about making chemistry, it's about making social chemistry, it's about education, it's about social movements, it's about making politics, it's about understanding the world in another point of view. And I think my point, I could be explaining how the PA works, or how the Partido X works, or how the social movements work, like Occupy or Yo Soy 132, and all this kind of stuff. I think that the idea is more useful to go on the why these things are possible, why you can go outside of academia, why you can go outside of the political party, why you can go outside of the labor union. I think that one thing that we succeeded in doing is separate the content from the container. You could separate the knowledge from the container, which was the book or the savior, or the university or the library. And in doing this, we also separated the big infrastructures with, or the big means to do things with what we wanted to do. On the one hand, we do not need now lots of infrastructures, very expensive infrastructures to do things. We still need some accelerators in Geneva and around Geneva to find some kind of stuff. But especially in social sciences, which is my field, you really need just like €100 telephone and a $20 line. So separating infrastructures means that you do not need a big project. You just need small, tiny parts of knowledge that you can add one by one. You do not need to do the big project, the big infrastructure, the big institution to do or to create knowledge. You just can do that, as he showed, at home, and you can do it decentralized. You can do it on your own. The second thing is that you don't even need a collective to build knowledge. Yes, of course, with a collective it's much easier, but you can initiate the creation of knowledge without a collective. So said in another way, you might need a collective to build huge amounts of knowledge, but to initiate the creation of knowledge, you do not need anyone. You can do that by yourself, partly because you do not need that bit much of infrastructure. And last, you usually needed a leader that had to deal with the big infrastructure and the big collective. Without the leader, we usually call him the boss, you could not initiate the creation of knowledge. Now you do not need any boss. You can initiate something, and you can initiate it on your own without being told what is needed. If you need something, if you find the need, you just go and do it. So for me, the answer to is, are there any new places? I think that all of them. I mean, besides or added to the traditional ones, we were research centers, academia, labs, etc., or R&D labs. Anywhere or everywhere you can find that. You can find means that outside of outside of institutions, you can find or you can enable the creation of knowledge. It can be decentralized. You do not need anymore to be at the same time at the same place to create knowledge. You can do it everything outside of institutions, and that has a corollary. Usually where people were in institutions were the researchers, and people outside of institutions were not researchers. Now anyone that knows something can create knowledge, and this is a huge change. For me, it's a huge change knowing that someone that creates, it's a creator and not something that has a tag that says he's the photographer, or he's the copy, or he's the inventor, he's the one that invents. The second one is this individualization. It's not only that it's decentralized, which means outside of the traditional institutions, but that it can go really down to the individual. And again, I'm not saying that collaborative work is not good. I'm saying that you can initiate things, or that you can add up things afterwards. Unless that casual innovation or casual knowledge creation is now possible. as I said before, you usually needed a huge plan, you needed a project, you needed a lot of people, a lot of infrastructure. Now you can invent, or you can create, or you can just add your amount of knowledge anytime, anywhere, wherever you are, just adding your tiny part. Of course, big things will only come with the addition of lots of tiny parts. So again, I'm not saying that these tiny parts are more important than the other ones, but just the idea that now it is possible to add these tiny parts. So things that, to spark the debate, that things that I think institutions should be doing, or parties or governments should be doing. I think that one thing is help in diagnosing the needs so that anyone can contribute. Help in fixing or identifying the goals of learning, or the goals of knowledge creation, where is that we are aiming to, or what is that we need. And last, try to help people identify their own path, their own knowledge creation path. I think that anyone can create this knowledge if they have the ability to create a knowledge path, or the knowledge creation path. So I think I'll stop here and let it for afterwards.
Great, thank you, Ismael. And for this starting first position of all three, we'll end with Barney.
Aha, is that better? So I'm going to start a little bit by talking about the construction of knowledge in a learning context, and then I'm going to talk a little about the implications for creating completely new knowledge. So when we think about the way that environments allow us to construct knowledge, it's useful to think about the kinds of interaction that environments allow. And so Michael Moore, back in 1989, talked about three different kinds of interaction: learner-teacher, learner-learner, and learner-content interaction. And we can think about those sorts of interactions occurring either face-to-face, online synchronously at the same time, or online asynchronously. And if you think about prior to the internet, in most learning contexts, the interaction occurred face-to-face, with some opportunities for interacting with content online, but asynchronously through things like tutorials and quizzes and instructional media. Then through the internet, but prior to the introduction of mobile devices, we suddenly have available a range of different tools to help us to interact synchronously and asynchronously online with teachers, with other learners, and with content. But the situation becomes much more interesting once we introduce mobile devices. And I want to just show you a couple of scenarios to kind of highlight the way in which this situation, where we have kind of separate either face-to-face or synchronous or asynchronous interaction, can change once we introduce mobile devices. So the first scenario I want to talk about is the idea of taking face-to-face lectures but streaming them to people remotely, just as we're doing here and now today, but using things like conferencing software like Adobe Connect or Blackboard Collaborate, where we have a separate stream of text dialogue going on, as well as the lecture itself and the audio and the video being streamed, and where we have people within the lecture having access to a mobile device or a computer so that they're also participating in those separate streams. And what you see then is remote and face-to-face participants with similar but subtly different interaction opportunities. You see multiple channels of communication going on, both the lecture itself as well as discussions between students, questions of the lecturer by the students, and engagement with content and sharing of content happening at the same time. And the lecture recordings then also become a digital learning object for later asynchronous engagement. So the second scenario involves engagement with content, and there's a range of different ways in which that can occur online through the use of mobile devices. The most important thing with it is that we suddenly engage with content in a collective way, so that, for example, when we use webinar polling tools or tools like Socrative, other people can see what our responses are, and we can get a sense for the collective view. or when we collaborate through breakout rooms in a webinar and work on content, work on problem-based learning tasks with our peers, all of a sudden we're doing learner-learner, learner-teacher and learner-content interaction in a collaborative way at the same time rather than as distinct activities. So when we look at interaction now enabled by mobile devices, we no longer see a separation between face-to-face and online, and we also no longer see a really clear distinction between synchronous and asynchronous, because anytime somebody posts a comment to a discussion forum, somebody else with a mobile device is going to read it immediately and respond straight away. So the asynchronous becomes synchronous, the synchronous is recorded as an asynchronous object, so becomes asynchronous. So it's a blurring of all of those boundaries across those different modalities. So I use the term polysynchronous learning to talk about the blending of face-to-face and remote engagement using multiple streams of synchronous and asynchronous learner-learner, learner-teacher and learner-content interaction. So that's constructing of knowledge in a learning environment. And to finish, I just want to kind of highlight a future knowledge construction in a research sense scenario. I can see that it won't be long before my peer-reviewed articles sitting up online are read by someone, and immediately that they're read, I see a message to say somebody downloaded and read my article. That makes me feel very good. And then once they read it, they realize that they don't agree with everything in it. And they post a message online saying they like it, but they don't agree with one of the key points. Now, I happen to notice that, so I go online and I respond and explain to them that they didn't quite understand it. They see through a presence indicator that I'm online, so they ask if I'm available for a Skype conversation. I Skype with them and discuss the ideas, and all of a sudden the ideas are instantly transformed and further created through that process, which normally would have played out over years of waiting for somebody to read, make a response through their own publication, which took 2 years to get published in a peer-reviewed journal. So you can see how these kind of polysynchronous environments can facilitate very rapid knowledge construction processes.
Okay, Barney, thank you very much. We have the start position of all three. To introduce some small questions and to start discussion, we were sharing a presentation 1 week ago with the man that will be the new Director General of Education and Culture for the European Union for the next 7 years, who is a Catalan, and he was with us last week, and he was explaining that if you take a look at an operating room from the beginning of the 20th century, you look at the operating room and you see the doctor and you see what a doctor does there. And you take a look at an operating room at the 21st century, 2014, the same doctor can not do anything there. So all the things that finds there, all the devices, it is absolutely impossible to do any kind of operation. He was saying, if you take a look at the classroom at the university at the beginning of the 20th century, if you take a look at the university classroom today, it's apparently and mostly the same thing. So you find a lot of people looking at one person, speaking about something, explaining something. Maybe they are not writing it down. Maybe they are typing on a computer. Maybe they are doing the same on a tablet. But the model is more or less the same. We are talking about synchronous and asynchronous. We're talking about blogs, chats, wikis, podcasts, forums, and webinars and streamings and everything. But what we find today, mostly everywhere, is the same teaching and the same model to share knowledge that we have or that we had at the beginning of the 20th century. Do you agree with this opinion or not? You think that we will move fast from this vision that we have, or the vision that this Director General was saying one week ago in Barcelona? He was saying that we need to change this, by the way, but he was explaining that the vision it's more or less the same. Who starts? Victor?
I see people sitting here. They could be at home watching us, but they are still here. I am also here. and I feel there is a different feeling being here. There is still there is no human pheromones, but there is still something of being here. I have nothing against to being here. I have nothing against being sitting. I have nothing against reading a paper book. You have not to plug it. You can go to the garden and read it, and even in full sunlight, you can read it properly. So I don't think it's a competition between the old and the new model. In medicine, I think yes, because the people die more before than after. So we were fixing a problem. I don't feel we have to fix a problem in this situation, but I think that the opportunities are growing. So we are getting more diverse, more rich. And of course, you still have the people talking and the people listening, like in the Agora 2,000 years to 1,000 years and a half before, and it's okay. I mean, we have beds. We lay to sleep in something flat. It's been forever like that, and it's okay. I don't want to. There is no innovation in bed. There is no innovation in the spoon. It's cool for the soup. There is also the straw. But so it's not forcefully changing things and evolving things just for say, I don't know, DNA didn't evolve, it's still there from the beginning, neuro doesn't evolve the brains. So it's evolution is not something evolved when it's wrong. If you are perfect, the crocodile doesn't evolve, the Ebola doesn't evolve, cockroaches doesn't evolve because they are very strong. So the thing is, but the other thing is that there are new environments, so we can do more things. People which is not here can learn things because this has been posted. So we have a bigger impact, and that is something which is fascinating. I think we can go for this collaborative working will lead us to be able to deal with a largest amount of information. This is, I don't know if you were thinking of collective brain. I don't know if collective brain is any meaning or not, but for sure these tools will change the way we think, and this will have a huge impact in society. But I don't think there is a we have to change the bed. I like to sleep in something soft and the dark, flat.
Barney.
Look, I think that you're right, that if you randomly select a classroom in most countries, you will see practices that look very similar to the practices of 100 years ago. And I think it's probably less so in universities. If you look at universities in practical kinds of discipline areas, such as veterinary science or medical science, you'll see a lot of different kinds of approaches. You'll see problem-based learning, you'll see things that, you'll see lectures, but you'll see a lot of other pedagogical approaches. And I guess there's a need for authentic learning in those contexts, and so there's more kind of authentic teaching practices. I think the biggest thing that needs to change to enable schools to change is the way that we assess. Because we're still working on children doing paper-based exams as their kind of final assessment method, then we're constrained to inauthentic teaching practices. Until we can start to measure their success according to their authentic learning about things that actually help them with their lives, until we start doing that, we won't see changes in the pedagogy associated with the teaching.
Great.
I think I won't say that I don't agree, but I think that it's a very unfair statement. And because of two reasons. The first reason is that factory got two revolutions in the last 300 years, not only one, but two. Actually, if we count the digitization, it's three revolutions. Knowledge just got half of it. And for most of us, it began in 1995 when we got the internet for every one of us. And if we count the Web 2.0, it actually came just 10 years ago. So expecting to have comparing something that has suffered two revolutions and a half to another one that just suffered half a revolution, it's very unfair. The second thing is that education is a system, it's not a cell. So if you look into a single cell, you will miss what's happening in the edges. And the edges of not teaching but learning are huge. So what is happening maybe in the lecture has not changed very much. It's just a beamer and something like that. But what happens in the edges, what are children doing at home? They are using WhatsApp, they're using the web, they're using wikis, they're using blogs. Teachers are using all kinds of stuff to coordinate, to find new materials, to find everything. Even parents are using the internet and are using WhatsApp in the parent association for planning the holidays, for planning the health of the kids. So the edges of learning are huge and they are really revolutionary. So I think that it's very unfair to look only at the lecture, which yes, has suffered just a very tiny change, but the system is changing very, very, very quickly. And the rest of the system is changing very quickly. And if we give time for the revolution to come in full, I think we'll be seeing even more radical changes that what's happening in the factory in the last 200 years.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we agree that all these new ways to create places where knowledge can be shared are good, are interesting, are available for almost everyone who has access to internet or digital networks. But who defines what's relevant and what's not? Who seals which content, sorry, it's correct from which content it is incorrect? I mean, the big educational institutions for centuries, what they have been doing is saying, okay, this is the thing that is correct because we have our teachers, our doctors, the people that are doing research, and they are arriving to some conclusions. So we can say that this is, like we say, and this is the seal of the university or the seal of this, I don't know, publishing, editing company, or the one that says this is correct. What happens when everyone creates content, when content is shared everywhere, where content can be accessed by everyone who knows or who don't know anything about this topic, who finds this thing that Victor was saying to us? Maybe I can find the same thing, but written by another guy who wants to make me to do some other kind of bad thing. How can we face this challenge? How can we face the challenge of what's content, what's relevant or not relevant in this content? Barney.
So it so happens that Victor and I had a conversation about this at lunchtime, and we were talking about the challenge where, first of all, someone responds to your journal article and comes up with some comments, and you're a busy person. Do you bother responding to them? How do you make that judgment? Well, what we often do is we make that decision based on the credentials of that person. And one of the really interesting things that happens in the kind of self-generated content on the internet is that there's rating systems. When you go to buy an app, you're trying to buy a little app to teach you Spanish on the plane on the way over. You see 1,000 of them and you choose the one that's got 5 stars because it's been highly rated. Well, we could easily see the same mechanisms with journal articles where people are rating each other's articles, and then we're also rated ourselves as a publisher. So if I'm publishing a lot of articles, then I have credibility in a particular field. So when I rate somebody's article high, that carries more weight than someone else's. So we can create kind of managing mechanisms to help us to kind of filter the content out there.
I think to answer your question first is like there is a better thing to be teach, a better way to teach, a better thing to learn. There is a better information or there is not. Because if you say, how we know which is the good information? First question is there information which is better than the other? Otherwise, we don't lose our time defending our information. And then again, I think we are very primitive, yet in our culture, even we think that we are at the top of the evolution still. In hundreds. If you look at, this is very funny science, American scientists is publishing what was in the journal every time 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and it's a disaster. The wisest men of earth were saying things that is not possible that they say that. So, but I think there is a good information and bad information is there. Our problem is that we are not yet ready to get it. It's like in medicine. If you look medicine, 100 years ago, we put blood suckers to treat disease. We open the brain to do things. We dance to the gods. And as Voltaire said, he say, the doctor entertains the patient while nature follows its course. That was we are in in sociology and society and politics. We are at this emotional, intuitive, primitive way. At some point, we will understand that there is good information, bad information. There is healthy body of knowledge which allows you to go further. Here is the river. This water is clean, and then it's even you don't take penicillin because the water is dirty. You clean the water, and no one will discuss if you want to have clean water or dirty water, even if dirty water look nice because it's colors. Because like, oh, it's like radioactive water at the beginning of when there was at the beginning of the after the bombs and all in the 50s, the water was highly radioactive water because it's so cool. No, at some point it's an agreement because there is a feedback, a positive feedback. There is a reality. This is not all invented. So at some point, I know that now curation of information is really, really a serious problem. There is too much information and filtering the information, and this is used to do bad sometimes. But at some point, it's when we have enough knowledge. I think doctors they know when you have cirrhosis, there's a problem in the liver. You're not going to get angry against the liver because it's swollen and inflamed. You will try to decrease the inflammation. So I think it's in the future when we get more knowledge, this problem will be solved by itself because there is a good information and bad information.
So you think that nature will do his work also in this time? I don't know if Ismael.
Yes, I think this was a relevant aspect when we talk about information, but it's not relevant when we talk about knowledge. I think that, and that distinction is very important to me. I think that we are too much used to think about content as we are too much used to thinking on how to pass Cambridge exams or the TOEFL exams, which have to be passed differently or to be studied different. And actually, what it really matters if you are able to change your register when you go to a conference and have to speak English, or when you go to a bar and you have to speak very much differently than a conference. That was very expensive to do. I mean, telling information or certifying information or giving credit to information on an analog world. It was very, very expensive. So we had these indicators, which was the university, which was degrees and this kind of stuff. When it's much, much cheaper, as he said, to give credit, to assess, to prove that you have the skills, not the information, it won't matter. I think it will matter much, much more whether you apprehend the process and not whether the information is good or bad. In the last 3 years, we've seen how, so for instance, social movements have mutated at least 4 times. It began with revolution in Egypt, and it ended up the day before yesterday or yesterday with Guanyem trying to be the mayor of Barcelona. And there have been mutations of that, and it was the process of coordination of creating a program, etc., will matter, not building the program, having the perfect program. So I'm just being a little bit messy here. The important thing was not having the party with the program, but being able to reconfigure, to reset the network of different partners to be able to rethink on different scenarios, on different contexts.
Great. I will be a little bit provocative here, but all you three are related in your day-to-day work, in your job with universities, so cultural and, in this case, educational institutions. So if we are democratizing the information, the knowledge, we are saying, okay, it's interesting to have a title of something, to have your degree, to have your PhD, but it doesn't matter a lot if you can work, if you can live in your world, if you can develop your skills. What will be the role that will play the cultural and the educational institutions in these new models of knowledge construction? What role do they have to play here?
I don't know. You didn't see any of my titles. I invented them, and you trust me because I say things. I mean, I have criteria. I mean, when someone says something, I don't care if the baker or the Nobel Prize. I've seen Nobel Prize saying stupid things. The baker is say the most enlightening thing in my life, maybe. The question is, you have criteria. You don't look at the people by their resume. I know, oh, he's very important. He said that we have to go. I know people does that. They think that these people is important. So whatever he says, she says, they believe it. It's like, no, this is over. Please, a little bit of more criteria, and then I can decide if what I'm listening to is this movie is good, this movie is bad. No one else is going to.
Yet you're answering my question. What will be the role of the educational institutions in this new model of knowledge construction?
And then I think they are still competitive. I think that they can provide something that you cannot provide the social networks. I cannot provide so the lab still can provide things that I cannot get in my backyard. So still, I think they are competitive. And I think for someone like me, that would be a place I would go voluntarily to learn more things in this type of things because it's useful for me, it's powerful. For other people, maybe they don't know. I won't ask for my partners or for my travel companions to have titles or to be regulated as far as they are good for the job. And saying,
I think that the learning to learn thing that we always talk about, it's the thing, and not to be to go away from the model. Things that we can do as universities or our secondary schools or primary schools. First thing is to help students to find the context, to identify what is the context that is affecting them at school, at the job, at the other job, at the other job they will have after their first job, etc., etc. So that they can find themselves inside a context that is going to be changing and changing and changing. So that is providing context and helping to identify the context. Second thing is to enable that they build their own platforms that for debate, for knowledge creation, that they find their peers whatever they are and wherever they are, and the changing they are. Their peers will be changing from word to word. They will be changing from leisure to leisure. They will be changing from culture to culture. So they build their own network, they build the networks of their peers and different networks. So find these spaces. Where are the people that are interesting to me? What is their jargon? What is the way they interact? And last, to enable them or to provide tools for people to foster interaction. That is, we help them to build their own context or to understand the context, to find the place and the peers, and then to give tools to them so that they can interact with others, so that they can spark interaction. Maybe that is some physical jargon, maybe that is some language learning, maybe that is some processes for innovation, whatever it is. But I think it's really learning processes, and it's finding these three stages, which is context, which is places, and interaction.
Or you agree with that?
I'm going to I think I absolutely agree, but I think you missed one part that a really crucial
It's a very
part.
friendly table, right? It's a very friendly dialogue.
So, I mean,
you
I think
agree
the
with
way I see it,
everything.
there's like
I'm trying to find something that I
three
can.
things that universities currently try and do as part of their teaching. They kind of create and organize content. They support students' learning processes, and then they assess and accredit the students. At the moment, there's way too much attention put on the creation and organization of content. So we've got thousands and thousands of people all over the world creating first-year chemistry lectures. So if we can get away from that, so that we just let Harvard's MOOC creates the chemistry lectures and we all use them, then we can put our time into better supporting the learning process, and we can kind of unbundle all of the pieces. So I think there is a role, because lots of people are failing at university because content isn't enough for them, and self-directed learning isn't enough for them. They need kind of support, and if we put our energies into doing that support, we can make a lot more people successful at university.
Just one thing, I think it would be a good exercise to know what institutions or learning institutions should not be doing. Gathering up content, nope. Certification, maybe no. Assessment, maybe no. Even teaching in the sense of transferring content, maybe no. And I mean, there are lots of other stuff. Building curriculums, maybe no. I mean, there are a lot of things that we are doing right now that form part of a huge institution that could be split into pieces. I'm not saying that we don't have to assess, that we don't have to give credit, and we don't have to gather knowledge, but it can be done by several other institutions that maybe they're doing it better than us. Sorry.
Great. I can open this dialogue to everyone here. You can ask the questions you want in any language you want, or any language we can understand, or the people of the translation team can understand. Also, you can do your questions by Twitter using the hashtag FIET 2014. I'm reading, so a lot of people here is commenting things, but there are no questions yet. So if you have any question, you can start. If not, I will keep making questions to our guests. There's no one here in the room. You can keep thinking your questions, and we will move on. Or maybe you can do it here in the second. Aquí a la segona fila, un micrófono aquí, segona fila, second row, al centre.
Thanks. Actually, I have two, if I may. Are you listening to me? Yeah. First question to the table is, would you take two kids to university? Do you want your sons and daughters to go to the university? And the other questions to Victor is, you mentioned that content creation and the means of production are fully distributed, so in a way that capital is fully available. What about reach? Because, yeah, you can produce content. the difficult thing in internet is not producing content, is getting your content read. How do you see this is going to change? Is that going to be that way?
Um, I hope my child goes to university. I think it's a cool place to be, and you learn things and you don't harm many people there. I think it's good. No problem. I have no problem with the university. I just want to expand probably the ways we are developing things. I was not about creating the knowledge and the people who knows. I don't know. I like also the local working. I mean, I need the people around me trust me. I don't know. I don't need the people in the world thinks that I'm so cool. I don't know. I don't know that my law, the Puntes law, runs the world. Would be better the world, but we don't need that. I don't know. I don't need this such an impact. And the funny thing is that you can start creating your own things, from the gardens in the at the roof of the houses to feed yourself, or to do things. So I think that there is not all the not all the it's not true that all the infrastructure is distributed and you can access to it. There is 10 factories that produce microchips in the planet Earth, only 10. Each factory costs $1 billion to be built, and all of them are in the South Asia. So if there is a big tsunami, big earthquake, it's going to be really funny, because then no microchip is not more toys making back, no more cell phones, no more computer, all that. I also feel a fragility of our development, fast development, because if we stop electricity, we can still have pitch and ships, but we can even make drugs probably, but we cannot make computers, and this is a frailty. But I don't know. Answer your question. Yes, I love university and I work at it and I trying to make it better and other things, and I think that people has to have their own. I don't know. I don't want to go to listen to the best piano player in the world, Lang again and again. I want to have a neighbor who plays the piano. It's much better. Plays decently the piano. Otherwise, it may be a nightmare. But that is a big problem.
So, Ismael and Barney, you want to take your children
Just
to the
very short.
university?
I have a daughter and a son, and I hope that in 20 years, which is what they will take to be at the age of going out to university, they have a good portfolio. If they got it at university, great. I agree with Victor that it's a good place to be. But I think it's much more important that they have the skills and they have the ability to learn and to build, to transform this information into knowledge, and to have been in a university. And again, the university is a good place to be, but I think that having a good portfolio when you are 20 something, it's much, I mean, it's the outcome that I expected to, whether it comes or not from the university.
And of course, the cultural and developmental aspects of going to university are, really important, and that will kind of keep us alive a little bit longer, I think.
So, and the second question that Agustin, I think, was saying is about distribution channels. It's about the difficulty to reach. It connects a little bit with the first question I was asking you. The difficulty to connect with real meaningful kind of information. The difficulty to it's easy for one person that have good knowledge about something to share it, to write about it, and to share it, or to record some video about it, and to put it online somewhere. But the difficulty to reach. I understand this was the question.
So I'm an editor of a journal, and I think even with the internet, where anyone can write anything and put anything they like online, and our journal is published online, I think we do fill a really important role, because it is difficult to find the good stuff on the internet, and we have a peer review process that works effectively. And so, we can be confident, I'm confident, that the stuff that we publish in the Australasian Journal of Educational Technology is worth reading, because we goes through a lot of kind of quality assurance processes. So I guess journals is an example, and there are lots of other examples of quality assurance processes which are still needed online.
And I'm a little bit scared of what Victor was saying just a few minutes from now. If you have a big tsunami at South Asia, or we run out of electricity, like this Revolution TV series, that they don't have electricity and the world change absolutely. If we share, we are agree about the sentence that the summary of this session says that knowledge construction today is intrinsically linked to the use of technological aids. Uh, are we too linked to these technological aids? Who owns the storage and the management of this knowledge? Who is the owner of the cables that are transporting this information? Who is the owner of the data centers that are storing this information and all this knowledge that we are creating? Are you afraid about that? Not? Do you think that there's something we can do, or just cross our fingers and say, okay, everything will be all right?
I think that you have to be as independent as you can. So it's true that we depend on technology. We depend on microchips, and in addition, we cannot fix them. You could fix an old car. All cars are running in Africa because you take pieces. There's things that you can do with your hand and with fire and blowing oxygen into the fire. You melt, I don't know, you soften enough to make a piece. Then you are more free than we are now because we cannot fix a microchip. We cannot open a car. You cannot fix it. This is a way of developing technology which is, I would say, stupid, and we have done it in the 20th century. I mean, a responsible development of technology will be healing technology, that you can fix technology, that the pieces can be exchanged, that the pieces are ultra standard. So when there is the tsunami and the factories are not producing chips, we can take the chips from the toys and then put it in their cell phones and say, help. So that would be much more intelligent. We are not yet there, but would be good first. It's true. You have to be independent. If you are dependent, then that's what you are risking. That then you have to subordinate to this dependent. And it's true that not many people, I think, have been thinking about that, to make a technology which can be fixed. And I can imagine that in the future it's going to be so cool, fixable technology that you can repair. Look, you can buy this telephone, can be dismantle it, take all the pieces, and maybe this piece is not working, they change it, and even you can go to a workshop which is maybe not a workshop in your home, but something in your neighborhood. We have pressure and gases to make flames and electricities and different atmosphere that you can fix your cell phone. That would be much smarter, but there is a problem that then you don't buy telephones anymore, and then you collapse. So that's the problem. Is not a, the problem. The problem is
Right.
how
It
we
sounds
get.
like science fiction, but all these big companies that owns most of the main channels that we're using, there are 5 companies that own all the under ocean cables that connects the internet around the world. 5 companies that own all these things. 10 factories that produce the microchip. So there are very small numbers. There's one Google and one Apple and one Amazon, or one Facebook. So there's few people and they are private owned. What?
The network is obviously designed to make it so that there's redundancy throughout. It was designed specifically for that purpose. But I absolutely agree with you that we can't overnight rebuild it if someone who owns it decides to turn it off.
I think we keep asking the internet to do things that we never had before. So yes, there's only one Google, but there's only one Angela Merkel, or there's only one Obama. By that I mean that the concentration of power, being political power, economic power, just 50 years ago was much bigger than potentially will be in the next 50 years. That on the one hand. So I think the internet, if anything, what can do is redistribute power and redistribute economic power by redistributing what Marx said that it was capital. I mean, the means of production now are being digitized, and you really need much less investment to do anything, to produce, to be politically active, or to be socially active than just 10 years before. So at least potentially, I think I am much more positive. And the other thing, besides what he said, is that what are the incentives for this? I mean, what are the incentives to blow up the internet? What are the incentives to shut down Google? I mean, people are paying the mortgages because Google is working. I mean, thousands of people are. No, really, I'm not kidding. I mean, there have to be rational incentives for Google to be really evil, and I don't think there are. Not, I mean, not more evil than other incentives that we had before. So the likelihood of being positive the internet for a relationship with the past is very high, and the likelihood of the bad guys being very, very, very bad is very low. So I'm really, really optimistic on what the internet will bring in the near future.
We are becoming a little bit apocalyptic here in the table, and I didn't want it to work this way, but it was Victor's phrase that was like awakening me a feeling of a little bit scaring feeling about what nature can do to our beloved networks and connections and digital devices. You have any other question? Because we will have to finish in 5 minutes more or less. I have plenty of questions to make them. But if you want to have your turn here, it's now. Sorry, you have one. It's
Where are the servers?
where are the servers? Maria Macià, interesting question. Who has the control of this? She's repeating the question that we were doing. Maria is sharing this question to everyone at Twitter and to all these followers, all the followers that she has on Twitter. Do you have any other question to the table? No, I will. Okay. We were talking about storage, about the management of information, about who labels the information or not, if the information runs free, if everyone can create the information, and talking about new models of constructing of this knowledge construction. What's, for you, in your vision, the best format to create this knowledge? I mean, we're talking about videos, small videos. We're being a little bit TEDified from the last years. All these TED Talks about 15 minutes, very strong and very inspiring, and everyone's trying to do more or less the same. So we're being a little bit TEDified during the last 12 months, 24 months, 2 years, and maybe someone is thinking that this is the best way to translate knowledge and to share knowledge. Or maybe at the beginning when we were using Wikipedia, we were saying this is a very bad thing, it's full of mistakes, everything's full of errors, and right now Wikipedia is really fast, it's very well done, and maybe it's much better than any one of other book that we can find everywhere. So what do you think, in your vision, that to construct this new knowledge sharing model, it would be the best format to keep it and to share it?
I think that the one that has attached how it was made. I spoke before about the platform against evictions. If they did succeed and now they have like 200 nodes in Spain, it's because not only they gathered all the content in a TED format or in a PDF or in a website or in a blog, but they explained how they got that information, what you could do with that, how you could replicate it, how you could translate it into another context. So the information that has information on how this information works, on the process, or how to apply it, is the format. I know it's not exactly the question you made, but this linked data, this way of having metadata on the information, especially about the process, I think is the format, whether it is on video or audio or whatever.
I think that it's sometimes very funny when people show little clips that show lots and lots of people watching videos of people talking on their mobile phone, as though that's somehow kind of innovative. And it's like as uninnovative as you can get, listening to someone talk. You're just using the device for the same thing that you're doing sitting, you know, in a lecture theatre. And when in fact, the best way to engage with content is in an interactive way. And we've been researching for years ways of creating simulations. I put that slide up for that reason. You know, interactive quizzes, ways of kind of exploring and manipulating environments. You learn so much more through that kind of interactive experience with content. And yet we're still producing videos. It frustrates me.
So, Victor,
yeah, no,
very short.
I think the best way, or I would be more comfortable, is and is thanks to the internet somehow, is the group of experts, for sure, a group of ultra experts in different fields. That's the way we will move ahead.
Great. I think there are great ideas here on the tables. I will ask you just to finish this dialogue. We've been an hour here talking, a whole hour here talking. So I will just ask you to answer the question that was opening the session. Are there new scenarios for knowledge construction? I think the answer is it would be yes for all of three. And I will ask you for a small challenge, and I will ask you to create a new question that you would make around this first very specific and very clear question: that are there new models of knowledge construction that can open us new doors to keep working on this issue, on this topic? A new question, deeping a little bit on this.
Are we afraid of knowledge?
Are we afraid of knowledge? That's good.
How can we legitimate informal knowledge?
How can we legitimate informal knowledge?
How can we harness the potential of these new kind of environments that could potentially be chaotic and crazy experiences for students to enable them to have a positive learning experience? So how do we kind of learn about it enough so that as teachers we can make it a designed learning experience that is successful?
Thank you. I repeated the other two. I am not able to repeat the last one. Thank you, Barney Dalgarno. Thank you, Ismael Peña. Thank you, Victor Puntes, for sharing your knowledge with us, physical and also digital, in streaming and also in Twitter this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Molt bé.
Yo te diré 50, 50 es lo que va. Es que es que
Sí. Señalaba la pantalla, yo pensaba que estaba levantando las manos. Y ahora aquí, abajo. Me cuesta, ¿eh? Sí, me cuesta mucho, mucho. Tienes muñeca, yo me las muerdo. Ah. Will you speak?
Yes? Okay. Perfecte.
Bé, bona tarda. Anem a cloure aquest primer dia del fòrum. El títol d'aquesta ponència es pot descomposar en 3 conceptes claus: futur, tecnologies i educació. Suposo que el políticament correcte seria que la interacció entre aquests 3 conceptes em generés una reacció d'optimisme, perquè realment les tecnologies digitals obren unes possibilitats extraordinàries de cara a l'optimització dels processos d'ensenyament i aprenentatge des de molts punts de vista. L'accés a la informació, la transmissió del coneixement, la creació col·laborativa de nous coneixements, la interactivitat, la connectivitat, la creació de nous entorns o escenaris educatius, la comunicació multimedial, multimodal i hipermedial, la participació, la implicació en la transformació social, però no puc amagar la interferència d'un sentiment d'inquietud o d'un cert pessimisme, perquè hi ha un concepte subjacent a tots aquests, que és el de canvi. I si les tecnologies digitals remeten a un canvi constant, permanent, inevitable, l'educació remet massa sovint a la reticència, al canvi. Ens trobem envaïts de tecnologies del segle XXI en un marc acadèmic que conserva molts trets del segle XIX, com s'ha dit aquests 2 primers dies de fòrum. Els canvis a l'educació no es poden limitar a canvis de tecnologies i sovint la pressió social i sobretot la pressió del mercat empeny en aquesta direcció. Pot succeir que en una escola, per exemple, es faci el pas de la tecnologia del llibre a la de l'ordinador i que l'únic canvi que això comporti sigui que ara cal prémer una tecla per passar pàgina. I l'exemple no és una caricatura, és una història recent i propera. Per descomptat que hi ha històries de signe oposat, moltes, i tots en podríem presentar moltes, i per descomptat també que les rutines i les reticències provenen molt més del sistema que no pas dels professionals de l'educació, de la seva desídia o del seu desinterès. En qualsevol cas, per garantir l'optimisme en la integració de les tecnologies digitals i de les noves pràctiques comunicatives, s'ha de propiciar la transformació de tot l'ecosistema educatiu. Bé, per parlar de les possibilitats transformadores de les tecnologies digitals, contem amb la presència del Mike Roberts. És un plaer poder mantenir un contacte presencial amb una de les persones que ha contribuït poderosament a l'arribada de l'era dels contactes virtuals. Efectivament, el Mike Roberts, que és president del Darwin Group i chairman de US UCAN, va ser president i CEO de l'ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, i prèviament membre de l'ICANN Board. Per altra banda, i des d'un punt de vista universitari, molts d'aquí formem part de l'àmbit universitari, va ser també, entre moltes altres coses, director adjunt del Computer Center a la Stanford University i va ser vicepresident de Networking at EduCom, associació americana on va promocionar el desenvolupament i l'ús d'Internet per a la ciència, la recerca i l'ensenyament. Confiem en que la intervenció del Mike en aquest fòrum ens ajudi a reforçar el nostre optimisme en relació amb el futur de l'educació, un optimisme que potser no pot provenir del que ara tenim, fem i som, però sí de la confiança que lluitarem pel que podem arribar a tenir, a fer i a ser. It's your turn, Mike.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I was suitably impressed this morning when we were told that there were 66 experts here on the program. That has led us to a very exciting day. It occurs to me that since the national team has had its problems in Brazil, perhaps we should pick from our expert pool to send a FIET team to Sao Paulo to salvage something. In 1769, Gaspar de Portola was exploring Alta California in New Spain. and he passed very near the site of my home in Portola Valley on his way to see San Francisco Bay for the first time by European man. So you see, you have invited a speaker from your former colony with a Spanish and Catalonian heritage. The program committee has asked me to speak today on the impact of internet technologies on the future of education. I approached that very broad topic with a great deal of humility, given the level of knowledge and expertise and talent that's already resides in the audience before me. I hope that you will find the few ideas that I have to offer in the way of a somewhat broader conception of what we are about in that context, and that at the end of my remarks, we might have some questions and answers. Education inspires all of us. It's perhaps the chief legacy which one generation leaves to the next. It plays many roles in society, in addition to the transmission of knowledge. And there's a close relationship, frequently contentious, between the expectations of society for the results of education and the efforts of educators to meet those expectations. Education is part of a complex set of social, economic, and political relationships which are increasingly dependent on the internet and other technologies. These interactions with technology change the basic character of human activities and challenge assumptions about roles in the greater society. Of course, both the internet and education are affected by important issues of our time. Today, human society faces an intimidating array of challenges to our collective future. Climate change, chronic unemployment, economic inequality, unsustainable resource use, unchecked population growth, fratricidal warfare, undemocratic political regimes. The list goes on. A strong education system is essential in meeting these big challenges. A revitalized education system aided and enabled by the power of internet technologies. A common theme of this conference is change. Over a remarkably short period of time, hardly 25 years, the internet and the related technologies and applications have become the chief source of change in society, reaching all corners of the globe. The rapid fusion of converging streams of technological innovation is impacting nearly every economic and social sector and is profoundly affecting how humans live and work. These developments, which have mushroomed into a worldwide internet industry with revenues exceeding $4 trillion per year, are also fueled by the imagination and energy of tens of thousands of young developers around the globe, about whose activities we have heard today in many good sessions. An important aspect of internet-related change is in the new ways that technology is introduced. In the early days of computers, the mainframe era, new technology was introduced in a modulated way, mostly through commercial and academic purchases of expensive, large machines. In contrast, new internet technology today is introduced primarily as a consumer purchase by millions of individuals, actually billions of individuals. This has changed the dynamics of the way technology is diffused and used in society. Instead of internet technology filtering down to individuals in a measured way, it is now explosively driving up into society, uprooting institutions and upsetting established economic relationships. The phenomenon known as disintermediation is eliminating the middle of many activities and forging new patterns of production and service delivery. Consumers increasingly use the net to inform themselves and act directly. We buy online. We arrange vacations and travel online. Entire business sectors are rearranging themselves around online access and software capability. New areas of science and research, such as nanotechnology, are being opened. The internet technology we have now has an untapped capacity for use throughout our economy and society. As the saying goes, we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg. But if we are thinking about the future of education, then our vision must include anticipation of where the evolution of internet technology is going. The basic message is more power in smaller packages with better communications and instant access to massive stores of information. This is truly transformational. For example, we already have wearable internet devices, Google Glass. We have prototypes of implantable internet devices, wireless cardiac monitors with Bluetooth communication to the net. The development of prosthetic devices and exoskeletons is moving into widespread production. Self-driving cars are near. Personal assistants, avatars, with whom we can converse in natural language, are close at hand. In short, the next 25 years will see ever closer coupling of the network and its applications with humans in every aspect of what we do. As we ponder these changes and the moving targets and where we would like to take education, it's also important to keep in mind that the first use of newly introduced technology is seldom the way in which it is finally exploited. When Steve Jobs spent 4 or 5 years working on this with his engineers, with a lot of arguments about what was going to go inside, how big it was going to be, what the screen was going to look like. But when it was introduced as a consumer device, it was the iPhone. The reason it was the iPhone is because Steve, with his special genius, knew that people would think that a fancy phone was something that they needed and they could use. The fact that it was the most powerful computing device that many people had ever seen was an extra added attraction. And yet here we are in 2014, and the video capability and the connectivity and the instant access to information that this device embodies is far beyond voice. I'm not sure what you would say, but among my friends who have these, voice is almost the least thing we do on it. It's mostly a data device. We're on the internet, we're on the mail, we're in our websites, we're in our applications. Those are the things that this revolutionary gadget has created. And it's really, creating a new paradigm for education. I'm going to try some water. So what do these things in the internet mean for education? For those in leadership positions, as many of you are, the internet as a change agent raises interesting questions. How much change? How fast? How managed? What is driving change in the internet? And how will that drive changes in education? How can we adapt to such a fast-moving target? Internet-inspired change is pressing on education from all sides. Reformers are urging new pedagogical approaches and producing a blizzard of studies. Technologists are impatient at limited educational access to the network and the absence of tablets and other smart devices from the classroom. In addition to pressure from technology, educating our children in today's world is feeling stress from society at large. Post-industrial jobs require ever higher skill levels. Modern societies need informed and engaged citizens to deal with their complexities. Individuals of advanced education and broad perspective are needed as guides through the rapid pace of economic, political, and social change around the globe. For these reasons and others, educational establishments around the world are in a state of upheaval, with schools more frequently condemned than praised in their efforts to meet these challenges. In the midst of change, new approaches well supported by internet technology are needed. If we are going to change, and if change includes powerful new technology-based tools, then many time-honored assumptions about learning require new scrutiny. Updated goals for our schools can and should rely on new technology foundations. I offer you some ideas about how the internet might productively aid our educational efforts. This list is neither exhaustive nor prescriptive. Success at change requires both humility and determination. First, we need to recognize that formal classroom instruction is going to play a smaller role in a diverse family of lifelong learning opportunities for our students and for ourselves. Internet-based disintermediation is at work in education as it is elsewhere. You've heard today examples such as the massive open online course phenomenon, which I'm sure most people believe hasn't really been sorted out yet. Another is self-paced online courses, widely used in the military, industry, and elsewhere for training, which are making their way into the process of basic fact acquisition and advanced academic courses. Beyond these direct instructional trends, the availability of powerful internet tools is energizing new entrants into education, challenging the historic monopoly which society has granted teaching institutions. In the U.S., for-profit education is a growing industry. Charter school groups have been granted wide latitude to form their own schools under their own operating models while meeting newly adopted common standards. Enterprises such as Udacity, Coursera, and edX, and I'm sure there are European equivalent private sector endeavors, which are spawned from research universities, are paving the way for a new balance between new online and classroom learning and formal and informal learning, as we were just hearing in the last section. As an example of the anxiety which prevails in this whole milieu of new and old, a group of U.S. universities announced just last week that they are forming an entity called Unizin, which they describe as a collaborative effort to initiate and share a common approach to merging online opportunities with traditional programs. You may have heard that Starbucks Corporation just announced last week that it will pay for its employees to undertake the gaining of a college degree. Only, I think the number is less than 20% of Starbucks employees have any college. So this is really a remarkable commitment on the behalf of a corporation to assist its own employees to further their education. And I think that we're probably going to see a wider adoption of that view as the private sector realizes that the amount of resource available in the public sector and within government education ministries is not adequate to the task before us. Secondly, we have the opportunity to return to a focus on the student-centered classroom. If you think back far enough, the early Socratic model was of a scholar guiding the student in a self-discovery process of learning. The rise of mass education with large class sizes and authoritarian school hierarchies has burdened teachers and parents and society at large with an inadequate level of educational attainment, accomplishment, and satisfaction. A situation has developed in which teachers have become hostages to a one-size-fits-all model of education, especially in K-12, and a graduate is viewed as a product of the educational process. Genuine learning and intellectual accomplishment are frequently lost in this shuffle. In the U.S. and elsewhere, as you've heard today, a new reform movement is emphasizing the flipped classroom, in which the teacher is returned to a mentoring and guiding interactive role, and the student is exposed to direct learning opportunities via internet resources. It is too early to make unsafe generalizations about the complexities of new instructional modalities, but both students and teachers will potentially benefit from a return to a student-centered paradigm. Third, we need to take a hard look at the critical role of the teacher as a guide and an enabler of learning. The classroom teacher's role in modern education is an evolving one. In the not too distant past, the teacher's mastery of subject matter, accompanied by textbooks and rote exercises, was deemed adequate for the process of educating students. As the scope of human knowledge increases rapidly, individual mastery by teachers becomes less and less successful as a pedagogical model. In the future, the teacher's role will increasingly emphasize thoughtful access to online information and learning applications in an environment where the internet concept of mass customization, which is perhaps better described in a school setting as individualized learning, can be used successfully. Fourth, we need to think about structuring curricula around a common set of standards tied to real-world opportunities and continuous feedback. It is a truism that progress cannot be achieved without measurement. Consistent measurement has been an integral part of internet evolution for much of its history. Educational measurement has long suffered from disagreement over what is to be measured and how to measure it. Frequently sprinkled with populism, suggesting that equality of opportunity should result in equal learning outcomes. The key to progress in this area is an enlightened attitude towards individual achievement within an environment of powerful learning tools and motivations. Education must also come to grips with a historic divide between education and training. Going back to industrial age days and infused with social class distinctions, the divide is no longer there, if it ever was. Talent is unevenly distributed in humans across a broad array of activities. Great artists, great athletes, great scholars are not disparaged because their excellence in one area does not extend to all areas. Likewise, the learning opportunities we offer our young students should be as seamless as possible over an array of skill sets and potential employments. The broad reach of Internet applications give educators new options to achieve that goal. Finally, we need to adopt and institutionalize new ways of managing change within education. Society and the workplace are changing. A changing world rapidly creates new jobs and destroys old ones. New jobs in the 21st century demand a higher order of skills and critical thinking than in the past. Education needs to be more responsive to that change and adapting to a regime of continuous change. Educational institutions are no longer the chief stewards and conservators of human knowledge. That role is being assumed by online information giants such as Google. Embracing rather than resisting change will not be easy, but students need to receive the message that growing with change will be a constant part of their lives. One of the lessons that the internet is teaching us with considerable pain is that we are having to adapt to a changing environment in work and play and entertainment and learning, in which change occurs regardless of whether it is planned and aligned with educational goals or not. In the internet, we have a famous phrase that when we encounter an obstacle, we route around it. If the educational establishment cannot adapt to continuous change, then the internet, its learning opportunities, its learning applications, its immediacy, its access will route around us. Amid a plethora of new learning opportunities, schools need to stop and rethink and concentrate on what they do best. It's no longer the case that if you cannot deliver the education in a classroom, it will not occur. We've gone beyond that. We've left it behind, and we're going to rapidly leave it even further behind. So here's a summary of what I've been trying to project and convey to you. We need to think about student-centered classrooms as only one of a diverse set of learning environments. We need to enable our teachers to be guides and mentors rather than educators. Our curricula need to be more closely tied to real-world opportunities amid a system of continuous feedback. Finally, the schools need to be resilient and proactive in managing change and assimilating new technology. So in conclusion, the fundamental responsibility of education to prepare students for useful and satisfying lives is unchanged. But the means by which that end is achieved in a rapidly changing world reliant on current and future technology will be vastly different. Schools will find new techniques, new classroom environments, and a variety of learning resources never before available. A revitalized educational system will embrace change and work to anticipate its effects, not react to them. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much, Mike. Ens ha regalat uns minuts perquè ha estat més breu del que devia, de manera que tenim oportunitat d'interaccionar amb ell.
I realize it's late and you've been here for a very long day and you probably need to either go home or have a glass of wine or both. So if you'd rather pass on the questions, I'll understand. Looks like it. All right.
Sí. Yes.
Thank you. Just a simple question related to the first part of your speech, because I understood something like, are you saying that we are going to be more and more unaware of the technology just because we are going to be immersed in that with the wearable issues on devices or the Internet of Things or things like this? Is it connected with the idea that we are not really being able to transmit it, to incorporate it into schools, or access to that through a more elaborated discourse, just because we are living immersed in that?
It's a very good question. I'll give you both a pragmatic and an abstract answer to the question. I think that the pragmatic answer is that many of the complexities of the technology and the manner in which computing advances do what we call going under the covers. When I first began in computing several decades ago, we used to write programs to do memory swaps. And today, 99% of the people using the internet don't have the foggiest idea what a memory swap is, because it long since went under the covers. So, for instance, look at, I was remarkably impressed with Brenda Bannon's description of the work in her classes at George Mason University, where the students are taking the iPhone and building learning applications on it, and they're not having to worry about very much of the complexity of the phone, because the machine gives them a modular software interface that's easily usable and doesn't get in the way of what they're trying to do, which is to create a learning experience for new students. Now, the more abstract answer to that is that there's a hazard. I think many people are concerned there's a hazard that if we let a situation expand over time, where there's millions and millions of lines of code buried in these ever smaller devices that represent an unfortunate transfer of responsibility, control, and power from man to machine. And actually, all of that code was written by somebody at one time, but after a while, that gets lost in the system. So I think there is a concern that people not get unknowingly reliant on the technology. I hope that's responsive to your question.
Thank you very much for your talk. I was wondering, we have been discussing during these days about the future of the education, but what's your opinion about the future of the internet? Can we consider internet as a technology of the end of the 20th century, and is something new coming for the mid-end of the 21st century? What is your opinion on that?
We could have a week-long seminar on that subject. The internet is at what the futurists call an inflection point. We've grown it using the remarkable set of initial architectural assumptions. It's scaled, it's scaled by several orders of magnitude without any fundamental change to the original architecture. There's no pattern in human history of our being able to do such a thing. But we've reached the point where it is so deeply reaching into every aspect of society that people are looking for some institutional stability and, pardon me, and some institutional guarantees, which is all netted down basically under the label of internet governance. Some people consider internet governance to be an oxymoron because they really believe in a sort of nihilist fashion that the internet is so flat, so distributed, so decentralized, so federated, so interoperable that it doesn't need governance. That's a diminishing view. You know, most Americans are extremely unhappy with the surveillance that our military and our NSA has been carrying on. And the courts, fortunately, the courts in the US are beginning to turn that around. But how do we have a mechanism that expresses our displeasure with the internet evolving in a way that supports in whatever manner that kind of behavior? You know, it's one thing to be unhappy. It's another thing to have the tools and the resources and the ability to do something about it. Now, ICANN, which I was the first president and CEO of, has assumed, even though ICANN really is only responsible for, pardon me, the domain name system of the internet, the domain name system is so much the core of what goes on as everyone uses the internet that it's a focus for attention on the governance issue. And ICANN is struggling, I think that's the correct word, it's struggling and working hard to try to establish a more accountable, more broadly based, less US-centric approach to the future. So it's a sort of a long-winded answer to your question, but I'd encourage everybody to sort of keep their eye on what's going on with ICANN and internet governance. There's a website with a ton of material on it. There's newsletters. There's opportunity for direct participation. ICANN has recently opened offices with local language facility in a dozen different places. So there's a commitment there to essentially respond to this challenge. Now, I say a commitment. You know, they're not there, and in fact, the problem keeps getting bigger and more complicated because, as I'm sure everybody realizes, sovereign governments aren't 100% happy with this. You know, we have no human model for successful transnational organization that's not accountable to sovereign governments. You know, we have the law of the sea treaty. But the law of the sea treaty is just a group of nations that said, okay, here's a few pieces of paper that talk about how to treat the oceans, and we all agree to abide by them. So the ICANN, in the sense of internet governance, is really fundamentally different, and how it evolves and how grounded it is and how satisfactory it is are still issues that not only need good outcomes, but they need public participation to help them along. I'm sorry, that was another long-winded answer, but you asked me a pretty deep question.
Some question? What about the use of internet in the primary school in the United States?
In the which school?
In the United States.
In education?
In education.
I don't think that the United States has a claim to any superior use of the internet in education. We are struggling with the same issues there that you are here. Better connectivity, affordability, incubating creative, lively application development environments within spheres of influence such as education. You know, it requires a new and different kind of partnership to support these things. I happen to live in Silicon Valley, so I've been a spectator and a participant to an extent in the sort of magic that has occurred there over the last 25, 30 years. And we need, you know, we're beginning to cross-fertilize that dynamic elsewhere. You know, it's by no means the case that entrepreneurship in the internet sphere only occurs in Silicon Valley anymore. There are lots of places now that are doing excellent work. But you know, that dynamism, you know, that if you will, and we talked about this a little bit with the expert group the other day, you know, I think especially in Europe, and I'm not entirely sure why, but there's an unwillingness to take a chance that results in failure. You know, one of the things about the environment in which I live out there is that almost all the bright people have 2 or 3 conspicuous failures in their record. But they picked themselves up and went forward to very substantial success. And they learn from their failures. So, you know, this dynamic of being experiential, willing to fail, having access to capital that tolerates failure. In Silicon Valley, the successful venture capitalists assume that only 1 or 2 out of 10 ventures that they fund will pay off. So that means that 7 or 8 are going to go under, and their millions that they put into them are gone. But you know, but when they pay off, they tend to pay off big. Google, Facebook, Apple. There are many, Cisco, there are many others. Cisco was a lab product from Stanford. It was developed when I was director of the computer center at Stanford, not within my organization, but in the computer science department. But nobody thought anything about it until the 2 people that were most directly involved said, you know, we're not getting anywhere here in the lab at Stanford. And they talked the university into giving them a license to take it outside. And within 5 years, they were each worth $100 million, which in the 1990s was a lot more exciting than it is today. Oh, he wants to talk in Spanish? Oh. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding you. She will ask you in Spanish. The question will be in Spanish. All right. Fine. Yep. Go ahead.
Vale. Mi pregunta es que, ¿qué garantiza que la introducción de las nuevas tecnologías haga que los alumnos aprendan? Porque creo que en España los alumnos callan, memorizan y reproducen, pero no piensan. Y estoy a favor de la introducción de las nuevas tecnologías, pero pienso que a la vez se tendría que pensar cómo cambiar este modelo.
I'm very sorry, but I only heard half of that. Can we have a short version of it?
Vale. Sí, que digo que garantiza que la introducción de las nuevas tecnologías en la educación, que cosa que estoy a favor, vaya a hacer que los alumnos aprendan, o sea, adquieran conocimiento en lugar de lo que hacen ahora, al menos en España, callar, memorizar, reproducir, sin pensar. Y digo, si las nuevas tecnologías mejorarán esto.
Yep. It's not working. Just somebody translate it for me. Will they live better? Well, that's a very good question. Is technology making our lives better? You know, I shouldn't keep you, but this is a topic on which I spent a good deal of time talking with my friends and colleagues in recent years. I've been very active in policy circles in the U.S. since the late 1980s. I spent 10 years working in Washington. The expectation after the end of the Cold War was that it was the triumph of democracy and the triumph of private enterprise. So here we are in 2014, and it's not much of a triumph. In fact, there are a lot of questions raised about whether a capitalist system can really guide human society where it needs to go. So personally, I think that the present political structure of the developed world, which is basically based on democratic principles and processes, is not adequate to the future. Now, having said that, I don't have any instant answers. But it's very clear that the concentration, that one of the vulnerabilities of democracy, representative democracy, the way we practice it, is tyranny of the minority and concentration of power. It's probably seen its worst case in the United States right now, where we have a government that's paralyzed by very few, very rich people who can buy votes in the Congress. So something got to be done about that. You would hope that a peaceful process at the ballot box will accomplish it. But for instance, we had the Occupy movement a couple, 3 years ago as a result of the recession. And people can hardly remember today that all of these people were massed in Washington and New York and elsewhere complaining about how could our great country allow the financial sector to control everything that's going on. At a more direct and personal level, I think some of the things that I recited in my talk are evidence that most people's lives are positively affected by the development of the internet. We have enormously more convenient access to many things that we need, our daily lives. I mean, for instance, I can go anywhere in the world and ask Google how to find my hotel, and it'll tell me right on my phone. That inconceivable 10 years ago. That in fact, I was with my daughter on a trip out of state in California a couple of weeks ago on my way to a race. One way I keep myself alive is by running road races. And Google told me to go through an intersection, go to the next U-turn, and turn around, and the motel would be on the right. Now, just if you know a little bit about computing, you know that the algorithms and the data to put that kind of thing in a direction system and then talk it to me is really, really good and really, really elegant. So you've heard people all day talking about great applications, and they're out there and they're making our lives easier and more productive. More productive is very important because our productivity is not adequate to the debts we've run up, and it's not adequate to the costs that we have to bear in the future to deal with things like education, infrastructure, health, care of the elderly, things like that.
No? Then thank you very much, Michael. Gràcies per haver estat fins al final de la sessió. Clausurem ja fins demà. Gràcies.